There's so many times when I tell myself that I should talk about the things I don't want to talk about. Because I think, like most people, I sort of stop short when there's something, when I'm coming up on a subject that I don't want to talk about. And I tell myself, push forward. Those are the things, those are the things you should be talking about. In fact, start out with those things, focus on those things that you don't want to talk about because really those are the most interesting things. Those are the things that people want to hear about. And if it's hard for you to talk about it, that means it needs to be said. It's the most important stuff that needs to be said. It's the most important stuff that people want to hear, and frankly, it's entertaining. Um, it was some time ago. What is that woman's name? Mackenzie Phillips, the actress who is the daughter of the late John Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas. And so this is going way back, but she was, I mean, I wasn't really around during her heyday, so I guess she was this actress on some successful TV show, and she had always been struggling with drugs. She had always had a substance issue, and so I guess she would be on the show and then she wouldn't be, and maybe she would come back and then leave again or something, but she would always kind of reemerge as, oh, I'm sober now, everything's fine now, and then she would disappear again because she was in rehab or something. She'd fall off the wagon or whatever, and then she'd come back, and that just seemed to be this ongoing cycle in her life. So, like, I don't know, was it like 10, 15 years ago? She came out with a bombshell that her father, John Phillips, had been basically molesting her. And I mean, I guess the way she described it was that they had had a sexual relationship. Kind of the way she sort of described it was almost like it was consensual or, like a relationship, not a victimization the way I think most people would describe it. And I remember, was she on Celebrity Rehab? I just remember Dr. Drew somehow being involved in her this bombshell basically coming out. And I know everybody talks shit about Dr. Drew. I personally love Dr. Drew. He's been very special and important to me in my life, so deal with it. So, somebody had said, or somebody had asked him, or somehow alluded to the fact that, well, she gets sober every once in a while and then she falls back off again. And, so what's different about this time? And Dr. Drew said something that was so interesting to me that, like, I think, he wasn't guaranteeing it, but he's like, I think she's done. I think that cycle is over because this was the big thing she needed to reveal. This was basically what was causing her substance issues. And now that it's out, and obviously, well, John Phillips is dead, but also, now that she sort of conquered this big secret, she's kind of done. There isn't, she's probably not going to cycle like this anymore. And I thought that was so interesting. I mean, talk about something you don't want to talk about, but talking about this or any sort of traumatic incident is the stuff that helps you move forward. So you're not repeating those same cycles and going through the same foibles and stuff that you've been going through most of your life. And I think about things like that. Like, what are the things that I don't want to talk about or don't want to think about even that are sort of holding me back? It's just amazing how revealing that, you've had this terrible incestuous relationship with your father would give you so much happiness and freedom. I mean, obviously holding things in is painful, but like, what is it about just saying the truth about something or just revealing something that like literally changes your life? And I mean, I'm not morbidly obese or anything, but I've definitely been heavier than I want to be. And I really feel like weight is tied to things for whatever reason. Like, I feel like if I somehow got over some stuff in my life, that I probably would never have a weight issue again. And I don't know that for sure. I have no guarantee of that, but I just have that feeling. And I definitely, and I hate to sound like I'm fat shaming or something, but I definitely have seen people, there are people, then modern lifestyle and modern diet is not exactly, doesn't promote the slimmest of waistlines, let's put it that way. But, then you see a person who is in pain. You just know they're in pain. They're like probably literally physically in pain because of their weight, but also because I don't mean to sound flippant, but I see some people and I think that person has eaten a lot of feelings. And I feel like a lot of my weight is just feelings eaten. And it's just a physical manifestation, basically, of feelings, problems, hurt that I, in my own way and pretty natural way for a lot of people, have tried to ameliorate with eating. Like when my mother died, I gained so much weight. I eventually lost it. I don't know. My weight is very strange. But I noticed that before she died, I was actually very thin. I was quite thin. Yeah, that's right. Because my sister got married around that time. And I remember, getting into my bridesmaid dress shopping for a bridesmaid's dress was like the easiest thing in the world because I was really thin. Why I was thin, I could absolutely not tell you. I have no idea why I was thin because I wasn't doing anything special. I mean, granted, I was young and stuff, but I had been like more doughy in high school. And then in my mid-20s, I got really thin for some totally unknown reason. And, my doctor was even concerned, but it's like I wasn't trying to lose weight. I thought I was doing everything the same. I thought I looked the same and then realized, no, I don't look the same. And then my mother died very suddenly, unexpectedly, and it was very traumatic. And in the years after that, in a year or two after that, I'd gained a bunch of weight. I couldn't tell you how much. I would say maybe like, I don't know, 30, 40 pounds or something like that. Not a lot of weight in the grand scheme of things. Believe me, I've gained more than that for other traumatic reasons, really. But I felt like I was doing everything the same. I didn't feel like I was eating more. I didn't feel like I was doing anything special or different. It was just like, and I think to some extent I might have just held on to weight more after the trauma. And yeah, maybe I probably did eat not as well as, I did at other times, but the effects of not eating as well were so pronounced in ways that it hadn't been before. So I honestly think, just in hindsight, that just the sadness, the horror of losing my mother and of not having her in my life anymore, not having that mother's love in my life anymore, my body decided to, take matters into its own hands, really. And maybe it did sort of subconsciously persuade me to eat comfort foods that made me feel good temporarily and temporarily made me gave me temporary relief from the pain of losing my mother and not having her in my life. I mean, it's kind of a two-part thing. The losing her was fucking awful, and then the life without her was awful. Two sort of differently painful experiences. And I think food probably did play a part in making me not think about how I lost her, and also making me not think about how painful it was to live, to have to keep going without her. But it was so subconscious. It was so subtle because I literally did. And no one said to me, gee, you sure seem to be eating a lot more or anything like that. And then at the same time, even if my diet changed, I think my body just held on to that fat, held on to those calories for dear life and wasn't going to let them go. I think, just the layer of fat around my body probably felt good to my body. It felt kind of like a hug, it was having, these these love handles and stuff was like a hug around my body. It was padding, it was warmth, you know, sort of a abstract, but, an attempt to mimic mother's love and comfort that I had had up to that point, with my mother. So I think I feel like my weight issues would go away if I would deal with things, if I talked about the things that were hard to talk about, if I confronted the stuff in my life that's hard to confront. Another incident in which I gained a ton of weight, I was super thin, and that was definitely the result of some disordered eating as well. I'm not to say that I was thin does not imply necessarily that I was healthy, but I had this period where I was very thin and I was loving it and stuff. And so then one day I got mugged. And I hate the word mugged because it doesn't quite convey how awful and violent and scary the incident actually was. But yeah, I was robbed of my cell phone because that was like literally the only thing I had on me at the moment. Luckily, I didn't have my wallet at the time. And so I was mugged and I was beaten up by these two feral children. And I put on, let's see, so when I was mugged, I was about like 140 pounds. And in a year, I was up to like 225, 230 pounds. So Jesus fucking Christ, I almost gained like 100 pounds in like a year. Now, granted, I made it look good. I wasn't necessarily mad that I gained weight, but it just goes to show you that, it wasn't that I suddenly like became, a poor eater, even though, my eating wasn't great. But honestly, I didn't feel like I was doing very much differently between 138 pounds and 230 pounds. It just goes to show you how much emotional stuff plays a role in weight. And I'm just bringing up weight as a specific example. I'm not, liberating my mind just so I can lose some pounds. It's so much more than that. But it's just a very concrete example that you can look at and see that, yes, emotions and weight, emotions have effects on you that can affect you visually as well as emotionally. And so the weight is sort of coming off now in quarantine, praise God. And, yeah, but it's amazing how much that was the biggest weight gain I've ever had in my life. And it's almost like I didn't even realize it was happening. And it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And it's like, I feel like if I had talked about the incident more and dealt with it more, I probably would not have gained all that weight. And it's not that like being thin somehow made me more vulnerable to attack or anything like that. Because I've seen people where they were thin and somehow got unwanted sexual attention and gained weight in order to stave off unwanted attention. I wasn't trying to stave off attention. I think once again, it was literally that envelope of fat around me that made me feel comforted and safe and warm. Lord knows I'm all about being safe and warm and comfortable. That is my lifetime pursuit. My whole life. I'm always, even in the summer, I'm always just trying to be warm. And so I think my body was like, okay, she wants to be warm and safe and cozy. Bring on the fat. But yeah, so I just finished talking to my therapist and we were talking about fear. Fear is definitely an issue with me. I'm scared. I feel like I'm scared to do everything. The word I use is freeze. I freeze so much. I get overwhelmed and my circuits overload and I freeze. And so we were talking about, she had to remind me that fear is normal. Fear is a part of life. It's just a part of living. And that's not really a message I got. And I noticed I'm sort of changing gears and switching gears and stuff. The reason why I wanted to even talk was because I wanted to sort of talk about fear for a minute. And, it's the things you don't want to talk about. Those are the things that are scariest. And I think when you deal with fear, you can make such a difference in your life. And, when you talk about the things you're afraid of, that's, those things that you'd rather not talk about, those things that you absolutely should talk about. First of all, I think those are the most lucrative things. I mean, I think I remember I woke up one time. Sometimes I just sort of wake up with messages, from who knows where. And I remember, I think I woke up one time. I don't think I read it somewhere. I think I just straight out of my mind woke up with this message that your pain is your power. I think pain and fear, in many ways are interchangeable. So I think talking about the things you're afraid of, the things you're afraid to talk about, they attract the biggest audience, because when you just sort of put it all out there, you're going into this no man's land that other people obviously naturally are afraid to go to. So when you put it out there, people are attracted to you exposing yourself because they're too afraid to do it themselves, and also because they relate to your fear and your pain and stuff like that. So yeah, my mind is a jumble right now, but basically when you confront those things you're afraid of and don't want to talk about, you reap such dividends. And you could reap benefits, including weight loss or weight management. I was talking to her today about, how I feel like I've made it absolutely nowhere in my career, and I'm feeling very depressed about that. I had a bunch of incidents in the last week that sort of reiterated that feeling to me, that like I've spent all this time in my career and haven't done shit. The reason why? Because I'm scared. And so she was reminding me that, everybody gets scared. But the thing is, I'm scared. It's like, like Roosevelt said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I'm scared to death of the fear itself. I'm so scared of just the feeling of fear and the feeling of freezing and all that stuff. And because I was raised, I wasn't getting messages growing up that fear is normal, everybody experiences fear is a part of life, etc. I was getting the message that fear is an anomaly. Fear is a red flag, it's an alarm bell, and if you experience any fear, you get the fuck out of there and you flee for your life. There was no idea of, pushing through and coming out on the other side. And if if something was difficult, if you would experience some sort of failure, you get the fuck out of there and you turn around. You run screaming from it. You don't push through. So you can't get very far in life with that approach to things. I remember there's this woman in Chicago on the radio named Felicia Middlebrooks, and she would always, did she retire? I can't remember, but she would always, start the morning with this, inspirational quotes. And she said, everything you want is on the other side of fear. So obviously when you're approaching the dragon of fear in the moat of despair, and you go running in the opposite direction, you don't go through and get to the things you want on the other side, in the castle, because you're too busy running for your life. And so I haven't gotten a lot of the things that I want in my life, the things I want to accomplish in my life, because I go running from the fear. And so I've been very, depressed about that. Well, I've always been depressed about that, TBH. Yeah, and so there's so much I haven't accomplished, and it's depressing. Anyway, and she brought up a good point, and, I was thinking about it in the back of my mind as well, that, there's historical reasons why my people in particular have, a fear of danger and a fear of, stepping out of line and taking a chance and stuff, because it could literally kill us. I mean, shit, everything's so hard for my people and stuff. Like, we have to survive, and survival comes first. And so when you are literally just trying to survive, you do listen to your fear alarms and stuff, and you tread very carefully, because if you don't, it could be your last, and be your last day and stuff. And so, we've become very risk averse because we're just trying to survive and to live. And yeah, things are still hard for us. And she said, things are definitely still hard, but they're not as hard as they used to be. So, one wrong step doesn't necessarily kill us as fast as it used to. Although, Lord knows, if you look at the news, there are exceptions to that. But we don't have to be as afraid. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, we're surviving, we're not thriving. And, all this staying in line and staying safe and, not taking risks, not pursuing things, yes, we're surviving, but we're not thriving. And so maybe it's time, if it's safe, maybe it's time some of us start thriving more. And I definitely need to thrive more, but it means that I have to confront fear. And I'm very Chicken Little. I'm going to go running, and I have to get used to not running and just dealing with the fear. Also, probably I would have to deal with not, get into the habit of not trying to numb the fear. And, people numb pain. I numb fear, I think, more than anything else. The fear and the being scared is just so, being scared is scary. And so I will, try to numb the fear by eating, drinking, zoning out, binge watching something, just doing whatever I can to take my mind off of stuff, in probably the not healthiest of ways. Thank God I don't like drugs, because Lord, I'd be all up in them. But, food and sometimes alcohol is my drug, and, zoning out and procrastinating is kind of my drug as well. That's a whole different video right there. But, I wasn't getting that. Yeah, growing up, I just wasn't getting this, very healthy coping mechanisms when it came to fear. It was, something to definitely be alarmed about and to run the other way. And so I got to start trying something new. I mean, damn, I'm old enough. And, and I was, the first thing that I was thinking of when I got out of therapy was, okay, so I was raised to think a certain way. It's time that, I be the parent to myself, because I'm still going on autopilot from what my parents taught me. And obviously it's not coming out very well. I mean, I'm a functional adult, sort of, for the most part. So they taught me that, and that's great, but I'm not a thriving adult. So I have to kind of reparent myself and teach myself these lessons that, I'm sort of coming into contact now with, like fear is normal, fear is okay. As long as you're not, touching a hot stove or jumping in a lion's den, you can sort of proceed through the fear to the other side and get the stuff you want. So yeah, I got to sort of reparent myself, figure out what kind of parent should I be for myself? What kind of parent do I need? Who can turn me into the successful adult that I want to become. I mean, I had some very intense parenting growing up. My father was very much a helicopter parent, and so I didn't know how to do a lot of stuff for myself. And I know he did it out of love, and really he was taking I wouldn't say taking good care of me, but taking extreme care of us, which is very beautiful and lovely, but I didn't know how to do shit for myself. And so I had to be kind of reparented by other people as I grew up. And the reparenting continues. I mean, I had to have my therapists and my ex teach me how to do kind of basic things for myself that I never learned how to do before because someone else not only did it for me, but insisted that I never do it for myself. Because, I think he wanted someone to he wanted to take care of me the way he was not taken care of himself. And that's a beautiful thing. And I appreciate that. But man, it kind of fucked me up. Anyway, yeah, more on this later. Have a good day.